There's a new government report, stunning report here, providing disturbing evidence that nearly half of the U.S. weapons supplied to the Afghan army are missing. And there are growing fears they are winding up in the hands of insurgents there. Retired U.S. Marine Lieutenant Colonel Bill Cowan's a Fox News military analyst. Colonel, good morning to you. A lot of money, a lot of weapons over the past decade plus. You say this is no surprise. Now, why would that be?
Well, Bill, Bill, we've watched in Afghanistan, there's been attacks by Afghan security people on NATO forces. We know there have been a lot of Afghans that have walked away from their post and deserted to go to the Taliban out of fear of the growth of the Taliban. And so we look at these numbers as we get ready to withdraw all of our forces by the end of this year, or have a security agreement that allows us to keep 10,000 people there. And we find out that, in essence, what we're doing is preparing the Taliban for the onslaught they're going to try and have after U.S. and NATO forces are out of there. And it's inconceivable, but a lot of weapons, Bill, out there clearly have gone to the Taliban, and maybe to the Taliban, Pakistani Taliban,
you
too.
Don't know.
And who knows where else.
You don't know where else. All right, here are the numbers we believe. $626 million in firearms into that battle, and more than 40% of those cannot be tracked down.
It's unbelievable, Bill. And, it's a clear reminder that Afghanistan is the #1 nation for heroin trafficking across the world. They've got this smuggling down to an absolute art science. And some of those weapons that are the Taliban have got their hands on, and probably the Haqqani network also, which is a little bit different. Some of those weapons are going to find their way to the West. These are automatic weapons, AK-47s, M16s. Pistols don't matter too much, but it's those automatic weapons that can be a game changer on the ground somewhere where they're used, particularly in an environment where people aren't expecting them. Europe, the United States, other places around the world that consider themselves to be safe, but now are at some risk with automatic weapons that the U.S. has supplied the Afghans, and the Afghans have done whatever with they wanted to.
And what would explain why we've given them more weapons than they actually need? About 100,000 more weapons than they need, automatic weapons?
Yeah, that's a great question, Bill. I mean, 747,000 weapons is what we've given them. Pistols, rifles, machine guns, grenade launchers. Those are pretty darn big numbers, and I think somewhere along the line we would have figured out why give them more weapons than they need, not including the fact that they're giving weapons away, or they're being stolen or slipped into a smuggling supply chain. The fact that we'd even give them the wrong number of weapons is inconceivable, and maybe in part that's because of the high turnover rate we've had of Americans coming and going. People go there, they're there for 6 months, they're there for a year, they don't get a chance to pay attention to the logistics request, the logistics chain, the logistics requirements, and it's just a lack of accountability on our side. And then, of course, that lack of accountability transfers over to the Afghan side, where they've done a terrible job of keeping track of what we've given.
And the thing to be afraid of is that they can be used against you. Now, you ask a critical question: where will these missing weapons turn up? Now, this story is out of Afghanistan. But remember what's happening between Syria and Iraq, and ISIS and the army that's taken over numerous towns in that wide open border. And it's possible that they themselves have taken over an arms depot in Iraq, and taken more of the weapons that we put into that conflict, Colonel.
Yeah, it's terrible, Bill. If you stand back and look at all the weapons that are floating around out there, I mean, I have a little bit of experience with the international arms trade, and I know right at this time it's very, very vibrant, not only from weapons that are being stolen, but if you and I wanted to go buy a bunch of AK-47s out of some former an Eastern European country that used to be in the Soviet Union, there are plenty of arms manufacturers out there. So it's not that you can't find weapons, but certainly when it's weapons that we have paid for that are going into the hands of our opponents, there's where we have a problem.
Now, we may have to fight again. Lieutenant Colonel, thank you. Bill Cowan with us today out of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Thank you, Colonel.